And just to set the table for our discussion about Trump's proposed interventions, although, again, the National Guard may not be coming to Chicago, as Trump said yesterday.
So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago, or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in?
Wants us to come in. So the saw about ignoring red states that have crime problems in major urban centers like Louisiana does with New Orleans. I guess that's by the boards. We also heard earlier in the week from Alex Ayala, who is the union boss for the Milwaukee police. I'm reaching out to Trump because I want the National Guard to come to Milwaukee on behalf of his rank and file officers. I know Wisconsin is an on-again, off-again red state, but to the point, it's not opposed everywhere. And that it would make crime worse deploying the National Guard. Well, that hasn't been the experience in the last couple of weeks in D.C. It's something that even Muriel Bowser, the Democrat mayor of D.C., has conceded. And yet this is what we get from the political leadership in Illinois. First, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton running for U.S. Senate.
Do you know that the last time that federal troops, or National Guard, quite frankly, were federalized against, for a state and sent to a state was in 1965 when troops were sent by President Lyndon B. Johnson to protect protesters who were marching from Selma to Montgomery. Protesters like my father, Henry, who's now 92 years old, who marched for voting rights. That's how it was used, to protect rights. And now here we are seeing President Trump federalize the National Guard to crush rights. That is not helpful. So we didn't ask for it. We don't want it. The people of Illinois and the people of Chicago don't want this to happen. It's a manufactured crisis.
Well, I mean, you can be opposed to the idea of using the National Guard, but I'm a little unclear as to how they would be charged to crush rights. I'm also a little unclear how crime in Chicago is a manufactured crisis. You mean what we're describing isn't true? The data doesn't constitute it? I know down year over year, but not that much if you go back a little bit longer towards like pre-COVID. 293 homicides, 1,374 people shot year to date. So if that's not a crisis, and that's just homicides and 1,129 people who were shot and survived. Doesn't even get into other Class X felonies. So if those numbers don't constitute crisis, what's the threshold, I wonder, for Lieutenant Governor Stratton? For more on the topic, pleased to be joined by Arne Duncan, managing partner at Emerson Collective and a former Secretary of Education, as well as superintendent of CPS and a founder of Chicago CRED, this community violent intervention program that we were talking about per his op-ed in the New York Times. Arne Duncan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
So we're talking about CRED, and I didn't get to the results, but I did go through what you offered in your op-ed in terms of the approach that you take. And it is providing some results according to research from Northwestern. To tell us about it and what you think the secret sauce is here.
Yeah, well, I wish there was a secret sauce. I sure haven't discovered it, but we've been at it for 9 years. It's the hardest work I've ever done. It's honestly the most heartbreaking, but hopefully the most meaningful over time and definitely the most inspiring. So we now have 9 centers across the South and West sides. We work with the men and women and teens most acutely at risk of shooting and being shot. They spend about a year with us. We do a whole set of things. They all have life coaches. They all have clinicians. Healing from trauma is really, really important. They get their high school diplomas. We just had a fantastic high school graduation ceremony a couple of weeks ago with about 115 graduates. And then we do jobs at the back end. We teach hard and soft skills. We have a number of employers who hire at the back end. And what we just really try and provide is an off-ramp for these cycles of violence that have consumed too many of our families. And so it's really hard work, but it's unbelievably inspiring every day to see the transformation that people go through, not overnight, but over time.
And as I was discussing before you joined us, I mentioned the Hope for Prisoners program that my friend John Ponder runs in Clark County, Nevada, that has shown great success in reducing recidivism among ex-cons who are paroled. So I'm all for those sorts of programs that produce results. I mean, who would be against that? But the idea that this is mainly, in terms of any federal support for what Chicago is facing, is mainly just about drop shipping money to violence interrupters for Pritzker or Brandon Johnson to distribute. I mean, I find that problematic because I don't see I don't see the results of that and the metrics that you're providing, at least as detailed in this op-ed, with organizations across the board. So, I mean, there is a separating of the wheat from the chaff that has to be done with these violence interrupters as well, isn't there?
Quality and accountability is always at the top of our agenda. And Northwestern does the independent, third-party research on us, and we're showing a 73% reduction in violent arrests. So, that's very real. We want to continue to get better. But it's pretty interesting. I mean, if you look at the data, we just had our safest summer since 1965. Now, it is not safe enough. We have a long, long way to go. I'm far from satisfied. But the safest summer in 60 years, it was also very interesting. You probably know here in Chicago, it's not just that violence is down, arrests are also down, which is maybe a little counterintuitive for some of your listeners. But that's actually the sweet spot. You want to have fewer arrests. You want to be incarcerating fewer people and incurring those expenses. And you want to have more safety, less violence. And so that's where we're going. And so the real question is, why are things getting safer if arrests are down? And I do think what we are trying to do, thanks largely to Governor Pritzker's support, is scaling violence prevention around the city. We now have over 1,000 peacekeepers working on some of Chicago's most violent blocks. I visited a number of them over the Labor Day weekend. And so I do think it is having an impact, a significant impact. Is it the only answer? Absolutely not. Does quality matter? 100%. We have to be accountable for results. But let me just sort of challenge a couple things that is so troubling to me about President Trump. I mean, the first thing he did when he came in was he ended the Office of Violence Prevention. So he ended that. School shootings, which are an absolute disaster across the country, impacting everybody. We obviously just had babies killed in Minneapolis who are literally praying at a Catholic school and were massacred. There's no thought there. There's no idea of somehow making schools safer, making our communities safer. And then finally, you probably know the vast majority of guns used in violent crimes in Chicago, they're not made in Chicago. They come from Indiana and Wisconsin. They come because we have porous borders. So if you wanted to deploy troops, National Guards, they put them on the border of Indiana, put them on the border of Illinois, stop the gun runners who are bringing the guns in. I promise you, if you do that, if we have fewer guns, we will have less crime.
Well,
police work really hard to get guns off the street, but they just keep pouring back into our city.
Well, I mean, in terms of school shootings, the Office of Violence Prevention, were there school shootings during the existence of that office?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
So that's not the proximate cause or solution to school shootings.
No, I didn't say it was the solution. What I'm saying is there's no serious attempt by President Trump to reduce gun violence. We know how to do that in this country. America has way, 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 way more shootings than any other industrialized nation on the planet, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I probably have more guns legally than your average gangbanger in the city of Chicago, and I've not ever committed a violent crime. So there's something else afoot there. And I mean, I suppose if your solution is to reduce the number of guns, sort of just generically, then how would what sort of policy does that look like that has shown effectiveness?
Yeah, legal gun owners like yourself, folks that want to hunt or protect their home. That's not the issue. That's more power too. That's there's no issue there. The issue is 60 to 70% of the guns that are used in violent crime in Chicago come from our bordering, frankly, red states that have very lax gun laws. Like people always say, Chicago has strong gun laws; they don't work. I'm like, we don't live on an island. There's not a moat around us. And so if we could stop the guns from pouring into our city, that would absolutely reduce gun violence here. If you have fewer guns, fewer criminals with guns, less gun runners bringing them across the borders and selling them in Chicago, we would all be safer.
Well, there's actually data out recently that finds that the guns that police have recovered, the plurality of them are sourced in Illinois, not Indiana or Tennessee or wherever else Brandon Johnson says they're coming from. But I mean,
no. There's not what Brandon Johnson says. I'd be happy to look at that. That is not at all the data I've seen. It's 60 to 70% of the guns used here come from outside of the state. I'm very, very clear on that.
But even if that were true, you just mentioned we're having the safest summer we had in 60 years. So it was safer than, say, in the 80s when Chicago had a handgun ban.
What's your point?
My point is to say you wanted fewer guns. Private gun ownership was illegal in Chicago for an extended period of time, and the city was more violent, as you just mentioned, the safest summer in 60 years. So guns is the proximate cause or something else?
There's always multiple things, but if we had fewer illegal guns in our city and less guns pouring into our city, we would be safer.
Right, but the reality is that you have, as many on the left want to say, more guns in circulation in this country than people. And so, I mean, in terms of being realistic about the reality, about the landscape you're operating on, you are not going to eliminate the existence of guns. You're not going to even make a dent. No, I know, but you're not even going to make it. You're not even going to make a dent in it. You're not even going to make a dent in it, right?
I'm not suggesting that.
Well,
if we had fewer illegal guns pouring into our country, pouring into our city, pouring into Illinois, we would be safer. That's my only point.
Just one other question. Governor Pritzker, too, talking about ICE and talking about the National Guard and the sort of the referencing of these people disappearing people, the referencing of them as inducing terror and cruelty, and that's the point. I mean, do you think that's constructive rhetoric? You can disagree with the position of the National Guard, but do you think the National Guard and ICE are paramilitary terrorist organizations?
I'm not following all that. I'm working here every day. I'm not following all the codes. I will say, let me be very clear. The National Guard are very good human beings with families like all of us. They're following orders. And so we need to separate. I really don't hope they don't come here. But if they do, I want to treat them with the utmost of respect and separate them from the man who has sent them here. And I do think deploying, folks that are trained for war on American soil is a major problem. I do think that.
Arne Duncan is managing partner at Emerson Collective, former U.S. Secretary of Education and Superintendent CPS, and founder of Chicago CRED. Arne Duncan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good morning. Take care now.
You too. And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
Good morning. It's 55 degrees in Chicago in the AM 560 The Answer newsroom. I'm Nikki Whaley. House lawmakers have introduced bipartisan legislation that would ban members of Congress from